All right, well, here we go. My name is Jeff. I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I've been really looking forward to tonight, not that so I can hear my own voice or anything like that. It's just because this group, uh, the Serenity Improvement Group I just feel it's just been so involved in the world in AA and what that all encompasses. So first off, I want to just acknowledge um, um, uh, the group and the people in the group. It's their home group, and I'm not sure who they are, but I know Phil and Kevin are part of that. And I want to thank you two gentlemen for just having me here and allowing me to be here and then tell my story. There is one person I would really love to meet one day because I get emails from him every single day named Stephen T. Never heard. I don't know who he is, but love to have a coffee with that guy one day. And it's really, really good to be here. So this, where's it from? I think it's from October 2nd, the 24-hour day book. And it talks about what makes an effective AA talk. And it's not a fine speech with fine choice words or an impressive delivery. Trust me, I want it to be that way, but it's not. Often a few simple words direct from the heart are more effective than these polished speeches. There's always a temptation to speak beyond your own experience in order to make a good impression. This is never effective. What does not come from the heart does not reach the heart. What comes from personal experience and a sincere desire to help the other person reaches the heart. So, Jeff, do you speak for the effect, or do you speak with a deep desire to help? And I speak for a deep desire to help, and I'm asked to talk what Jeff was like, what happened, and what Jeff's like now. And like our literature talks about, it says I'm to describe in my own language and from my own point of view the way Jeff established his relationship. Here it comes, God. There's going to be a lot of the God in here, a lot. Why? Because it's allowed me to have 20 years of sobriety, and it's allowed for me most of the time to be happy, joyous, and free. So when I speak of God, I just ask you to set aside everything you think you know about what God may be, and maybe consider looking at it, especially if it kind of like rubs you the wrong way, as spirit, universe, could be Mother Nature. As long as it's broad, roomy, all inclusive, and never exclusive or forbidding, we'll be on the right path together. So here we go. So I'm hopefully not going to dive into what Jeff was like for too long, because I love to talk, right? I'm not a stranger to a microphone. Like my very good friend KDP says, there's a lot coming at you, and so I grew up with a loving family. It was a mother, a father, an older brother, and a younger brother. Middle-class family. We were shown lots of love and some kindness and compassion. But I do remember at the age of 6 or 7, something happened. And what that looks like is that I found myself twice at the children's hospital for 2 stints, for 2 weeks, twice, from the ages of 6 and 7. And the reason why I bring that up is because this is where some old beliefs, old behaviors, and old ideas and ideals started to be part of my character of who and what I think or thought I was. So what that did for me is it brought up being alone. It brought up me being different. There's something wrong with me. Not too sure why I was there. I had make-believe friends because back in the late 70s, I guess they couldn't sleep over, or they had to work, or whatever it was, my parents, sort of thing, right? So, I remember looking out that window and looking at this, looking down like 5 or 6 stories at a playground with no kids in it, and it never got sun. It was always in the shade. And that memory, it seems like it'll never go away, but it was so gray, if you know what I mean. So this is where I started to be different from my older brother, my younger brother, and all the kids in the neighborhood, sort of thing, right? And to move forward, I was moving from grade 7 into grade 8. So up here in Canada, we go from elementary school, so kindergarten to grade 7, then we go from grade 8 to grade 10, which is junior high, and then we go 10 or 11 and 12 into senior high. So when I was going from grade 7 to grade 8, 8:30. I remember this. It's a Friday morning, 8:36 in the morning. I remember it because that's the exact hour and minute I was born and brought into this world. I got hit by this speeding vehicle. I did a double endo over my handlebars, landed on my knees, but I picked myself up with just a little scrape on the knees. But this is what happened when I stood up, is I heard a loud pop. And what that pop was something going on in my brain, my thinking. And this thought came to me. I just turned 13 years old, so I'm a little boy. If we are all going to pass away anyways, of whatever causes that may be, why am I alive? So what that did is it put me into, coupled with being 6 and 7 year old, now I'm 13 and I got driven and put into a major place of depression. I didn't want to be here. I mean, I was just beginning life. So that's who I was, my character, who Jeff was by the time he was 13 years old. I needed relief and I found it. And it wasn't alcohol. It was theater. It was drama. What that did for me is allowed me to be anything, anyone, anywhere for an hour a day. I was free. I was out of my mind, and I got to act and pretend of whatever life that I chose to dream of, right? But once that class was over, I'm stuck with the 6-year-old, the 7-year-old, and the 13-year-old. And every day after school, I went to the dumpster to go pick my bike up because of things that happened in my family's life. And I got picked on. We just call it bullying these days, right? So for a good 3 years, this is my life. I haven't touched alcohol yet. Maybe the odd sip of Nana's red wine on our birthday or Christmas Eve or New Year's or something like that, but nothing that would alter my mind and body. Theater stopped working. It just stopped. And then by the time I was 17 years old, here it comes, 17 going into 18, I had my first drink. And this is what it did for me. I didn't like the way it tasted. I didn't like the way I lost mechanics of my body, stumbling right and left. And I didn't like the way I stumbled my words either, the slurring and stuff like that. I felt like I was not in control whatsoever, but I knew the next day that it was going to happen again. We hear that a lot. I knew that wasn't it. I'm never going to touch that again or whatever. That wasn't it. I started to drink about fear-based drinking about once a month on like a Saturday night with a few friends that I met in senior high school, right? There's probably about 8 of us. They drank hard. Like they are the top of page 21, not the towards the bottom half of 21, but the very top. I call them hard drinkers. They were definitely hard drinkers, and I tried to keep up with them and eventually became a hard drinker. But I really did like the effect produced over time. And I remember my older brother, getting his ID after his license expired, and back then it was so easy to forge the dates on those driver's license, and we ended up going to bars and nightclubs underage. So I was the only one with this fake ID. So I'd be the bootlegger. I'd be the one getting people in and out of stuff, sort of thing. And we ended up at this really, really popular nightclub in the downtown Vancouver. It's pretty well known. It's really, really well known, and it's been around for a few decades by then. And I'm 18 years old. I'm a little intoxicated, and I'm playing table soccer, so foosball, with some guy that's a little bit older than me. Let's just call him Timmy. And I found out he was the owner of the bar. So I said to this man, I said, if I beat you, you have to hire me. This is a Saturday night. I was slinging beers by Sunday the next day. So I beat him. And I started to sling beers, become a bartender within 24 hours. And I loved it because inside these nightclubs with the flashing lights, this awesome music, and about 300 people, I was no longer a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 13-year-old picking up his bike from the dumpster. Like, I got involved. I got a ride, and I got lit up. And I thought, you people from the States, when you have your long weekends, you'd show up on Monday or Sunday night when we're all ready to pack it in for the week. And I thought you're all coming there to visit me at the bar, sort of thing, right? I had all this delusional thinking and all these pretend friendships in that kind of atmosphere. But it was incredible. You know what it was like? I felt like I was the guy off Studio 54. It was just incredible. 6 days a week, 5 hours a day. I would get up at about noon, mope around the house. I'm still living with mom and dad, and leave for work about 6, arrived to work at 8, started drinking at 8:01. The doors opened at 8:59, 9 o'clock, and I just partied for 5 hours, got paid for it. It was, and then my life actually started to happen about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. For this was from 18 to 30 for 12 years. For 12 years, I lived that lifestyle, and I didn't know anything else. But I remember I got a couple of jobs in between. Like I'd leave that job and get a real job, and this is where my alcoholism just really started to take full, because I remember I was working for an airline up here as a cargo agent. So I'd be the person delivering cargo, not luggage, but cargo. So when people shipping animals or shipping presents or even vital stuff like organs. And I remember I was working a 12-hour shift. It was first thing in the morning. I haven't slept yet. I've been up all night. I'm probably reeking like alcohol, and a rush, a cooler with a live organ was dropped off, and we had to rush it to a plane on the tarmac. And this plane had already taken off, so it came back, and it was sitting on the tarmac. And I'm driving this cargo truck, intoxicated, and I'm at the plane, and I'm looking at the plane. I'm like, I don't know how am I going to get it to the pilot. How am I going to do this? And I didn't know that windows open on these little prop planes, but it opened, and he said, get on the top of your truck and pass me that through the window. So I got on top of my truck, and it's a little thermos, like 1 square foot thermos, and I put it through the window, and our eyes locked. Like it was almost like an extended pause. It's almost like he knew, holy, this guy is drunk, sort of thing, right? He didn't say a word to me. He just grabbed it after he left, our eyes left, closed the window, and he took off. And I really prayed today that wherever that organ was going, it got there on time for that person. But you would think something like that would go, whoa, Jeff, you really need to consider what you're doing here, how you're living, and how much you're drinking and stuff like that. But no, not at all. I just couldn't wait to get off work. I probably left early and started drinking. Probably couldn't handle with those eyes staring at me that I needed to have a couple of drinks. But anyways, I got back to, working in the bars. And I remember, in our literature, or we talk about in our fellowship, that imaginary line that we crossed over. I know mine. And I'm pretty sure it happened before. I'm going to tell you this, but I remember this. I remember working in this nightclub. The song came on. I jump over the bar, get onto the dance floor, and I start shaking it. I start dancing, and then I froze. And this thought, here goes the brain again, but this is kind of a good one. Said, Jeff, you're really being a real disgrace to your colleagues and to this bar and everyone around here. You're so intoxicated. You're falling all over the place. You're knocking people over. You need to stop drinking. What you need to do is get back behind that bar, pour yourself a glass of water, drink some of that cold coffee that's still sitting there, get to work, get work finished, go home, go to bed, and assess your life. And I'm like, good idea. So I did. I went over I walked around the bar. I didn't jump over it. I grabbed a glass of water, drank some cold coffee, and the first person that came up to the bar to get their drinks, he ordered 2 shots and 2 beers. I poured 4 shots and 4 beers, and I joined them. I had no clue. Like that thought that, okay, I'm going to stop doing this, it was gone in an instant, and I just kept going. And that's how my life was. In my family life by now, I'm starting to miss gatherings, birthdays, Christmases, not being there, but not being present, so like dull at these gatherings, and starting to do things that people started calling my name. We started referencing names before the meeting, was Sketchy Jeffy, right? So I started to behave that kind of way and take things that wasn't mine to support the finances of drinking. And then my dad, if you can picture my dad, his name is Doug, and his nickname is Hoagie. He was called Hoagie since he was, 13 years old. And my mom calls him Hoagie, sort of thing. That's just what his nickname is. Hoagie got cancer in the late 90s. And how do you deal with that? How does an untreated alcoholic son deal with the king of his life going through that disease? We drink. I just don't drink just because of the hardships and the sensitiveness. I also drink when there's like Fred, not a cloud on the horizon. When things are good, I'm like, yeah, let's celebrate, sort of thing. But this sensitive topic came up, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know, like I said, I wasn't there for him or for his beautiful, amazing wife, my mom, or my brothers. So my drinking hit another bottom, like it hit another level. And I truly believe that all our bottoms have a glass bottom. You can see the one below it, and gracefully, my dad recovered from that cancer, right? I kept on working in the bars, and I tried to do geographical cures, like moving to the Okanagan, which is like 5 hours in the interior BC. That didn't work. The first thing I did was go to the bars there, and I just thought that all these outside things was a problem for me, and it definitely wasn't. And then at about early 1999, the cancer came back to Hoagie. How does an untreated alcoholic once again deal with that for the second time? Is Jeff drank, and I drank hardcore, that I started to become homeless. I had some couches, some hostels. I rode the transit. Yeah, I guess that's homeless, right? But I wasn't doing well, and I was missing. I was MIA with my family. I do not remember visiting Hoagie, Doug, my dad. I don't remember it at all. But I do remember growing up with that man. That this guy, he was 6'3", about 250 pounds, bleach blonde hair, piercing blue eyes. He's from Sweden. This guy was a Viking. This guy was a man's man. And somehow my family got a hold of me in November of 1999, and my dad was out of palliative care. So that means this is terminal. And I went to their house, and man, to see my dad, about 100 pounds, about 5'7", hunched over, skin and bones, no hair. There was no blue in his eyes. I couldn't handle being there. I felt so much guilt, shame, remorse, more of a reflection. The four horsemen were riddled all over me. I left the room where they were in, my two brothers, my mom, and my pops, and I was in the living room now, and I look over to the right of me, and there's this leather wallet sitting there on the table. I pick up that wallet. I rifle through that wallet. I take 40, 60 bucks out of that wallet. I put it down ever so sneakily and quietly. I turn around, and there he is, staring at me. Is my dad, with tears rolling down his face. And he says, "Son, how are you doing this? Why are you doing this?" And I didn't know what to say, do, or react. So I left. I packed my bags, and here it comes: one shoe, a skateboard, and a notebook, a knapsack. And I found myself on the downtown east side of Vancouver. And if you don't know the downtown east side of Vancouver, picture your Skid Row from where you're from. And it's not a pretty place. We used to call ourselves, it's where God's forgotten kids would go to, right? And now I'm homeless, and now I'm full bore alcoholism, and I'm drinking 24 hours a day. And when I'm not drinking, probably for that 1 minute, I'm thinking, and you know what I'm thinking is my dad, my mom, my so-called life, my brothers. I couldn't handle it, and somehow my family got a hold of me, and December 1st of 1999, my dad passed away. What do? You drink. That's what I did, is I drank. And sooner or later, I found myself, if you can picture the San Francisco Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, how majestic and large and historic it is. We have one of those here that separates the North Shore from downtown Vancouver. It's called the Lionsgate Bridge. And I found myself in the first week of December on that bridge, looking over the water, wondering how warm the water is. You jump off that bridge, you don't survive. You don't. I was here, so obviously I didn't jump. And I don't really know how I got off that bridge. But now I'm going to fast forward in my spiritual experiences as the result of you people, God, and the steps. I know how I got off that bridge. I'm going to go to 1966. My mom had a little brother named Rudolph. Rudolph was one of us. My middle name is Rudy. I'm named after him. In the first week of December in 1966, my mom got a phone call from her little brother named Rudy saying, Margaret, I love you. Goodbye. He went to that bridge. He suffers from the disease of alcoholism. He suffered from financial insecurities, meaning gambling, and he took his life off that bridge. He was 30 years old. It was about 2:00 in the morning, first week of December. I'm 30 years old. It's 2:00 in the morning, first week of December. Now ask yourself how Jeff got off that bridge. A God and my uncle. Sooner or later, I ended up in recovery. I don't know how I got off that bridge. My little brother, though, he's a personal trainer by trade in the fitness industry. One of his clients is a guy named Corey W. I used W as his last name. Why? Because he's one of us. He was a director of a treatment center, and they got talking, like bartenders or hairdressers or whatever it may be. When you're in front of people, you have the gift of the gab. You just sort of talk, right? And he said, Chris, if you ever find them, send them to me. I was found. I remember I was brought to his house. And I remember him picking up the phone and phoning my beautiful mom and say, Mom, we found Jeff. And I could hear her, and she said, she's weeping, and she says, that's great. What does he look like? And she described me to him. It's not good. And she said, I can't see him right now. I'll come in a couple of weeks, sort of thing, right? And anyways, I ended up at this treatment center December 24th of whatever year it was. And it was one of my favorite Christmas Eves. You know why? Is because I opened that door of my bedroom to 50 men that were suffering from a spiritual malady. Different 12-step fellowships, different diseases, but same malady, spiritual malady. So I was no longer alone. And that treatment center gave me a big book and said, go to your room, read the big book. So I did. So I sponsored myself while I was there. I was drunk by March. Nothing wrong. I mean, the treatment centers, hospitals, institutions, thank goodness I went there. But it's not AA. Right. But they did introduce me to AA, and I remember my first meeting. My first meeting was a Thursday. I'm 4 days sober. It was a Thursday. I'm still bat stir crazy, obviously. I get out of the druggy buggy. This will blow you out of the water. What happened to me here? I walk in that room, and there's this guy with a big long beard. I think my buddy Kevin referenced to AA Santa Claus. I got one of those too, man. He had a big beard, and he was wearing pinstripe overalls and big black galoshes. And this is what this man did when I walked into that room. He put his hand out and he said, welcome. That, even just describing that today, hits me like a ton of feathers. There was so much beauty in that service position. His name was Stan. Man, I miss that guy. But I walk into that room, and I had an experience with Stan just from a handshake, just from a welcome. That's what AA did, my very first experience. I look in that room, and up here we've got at the front of the room, we have the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. My OCD, if I ever in your home group, steps need to be on the right side, traditions need to be on the left side. And if they're on a little bit of an angle, I'll wait till no one's looking. I'm going to fix it. It's just like if I go to your house, as soon as you leave the room, I'm doing your pictures, and I got grid lines and laser levels and stuff. It's just my OCD sort of thing. But I look there, and there's this person called the chairperson, the person that runs this AA meeting. Right next to him is a guy. I know this guy. His name is Chad T. I met Chad when I was 19 years old. Chad is the very first bartender that legally served me alcohol. This guy was tall, dark, and handsome. He was a man's man. He had the gift of the gab. And I remember I want to be like him. So I'm in the bars for about a year, and I'm trying to do what Chad does. I want to show up how Chad does. I want to tell jokes and look like Chad does. But I watched Chad slowly dissipate. It was within a couple of years, I didn't know where he was. And I'd see him once or twice a week. He disappeared. The disease of alcoholism got him. So there's my first experience with AA. Santa Claus that welcomed me and gave me a spiritual experience, and my buddy Chad with 2.5 years sober. Someone's trying to control my camera here. Sorry. Um, so it was good. But the thing about that meeting was there's a lot of Scotsmen and Irishmen in there, and I couldn't understand anything they were saying. Nothing at all. And I guess it wouldn't have mattered because it probably would have just not even entered any of the ears. But Stan and Chad really made that experience to be a blessed one. And 3 months later, I relapsed because I didn't get step one because I thought alcohol was the problem. Remember, I'm sponsoring myself. I'm not hearing the clear-cut directions in these meetings that I'm choosing to go to. Whether maybe they were said, I don't know, but I just couldn't hear it, whether I didn't want to or just couldn't. Blessed with, like Mark H says, blessed with ears and you cannot hear. That sort of thing was happening. So I relapsed. That was March of 2002. And this bottom there's the glass bottom, was more of an emotional bottom. I saw the bridge coming at me. I saw the homelessness coming at me. At this time, page 119 and the 12 and 12 happened. I might reference a couple pages out of our literature. And this is page 119 of the 12 and 12, which is in step 12. And this is when boy meets girl on AA campus. That is in my story. And she is on here, and her name is Brandy. We're married today with 3 kids, so it can happen. It can happen. But during my relapse, there's the line and all that kind of stuff. And it was August 15th, 2003, 10:10. It was 10:10 at night, and was my last drink. And August 16th, 2003, I've been sober ever since. And I went back to this treatment center, but I knew what I needed to do at this treatment center besides cook food for 50 people, learn how to clean myself and all that kind of stuff. So I knew I needed to go back to AA and try to hear what you people are saying and try to grab on to what you people are doing. And I did, and I got some sobriety. I got some time in me, a couple years. I'm dating this beautiful, amazing girl named Brandy. Yeah, this guy had to marry or get involved with a girl named Brandy, named after alcohol. But anyways, all of a sudden, little Jeffrey was conceived, was born. I didn't name him. That would have been ego. I think my wife named him. But so this little miracle, I'm pretty sure he saved us, not just our relationship, but both of our sobrieties. And I've learned so much from that guy. But I was still untreated. I'm still suffering in AA. I'm going to work, not going to work, calling work, and with no one on the other end of the phone, and the phone's beeping, and Brandy can hear it and go, "You're not talking to anyone." And, I'm just being shady and sketchy like I used to be, just sober. And then at about that first time through treatment, when I got into step 4, my dad, Hoagie, was on that step 4 because he didn't hug me enough. I had a resentment towards him because he was very quiet. I wanted a different type of father, sort of thing, right? And we worked through those columns and got into the 4th step, which I won't do. I don't have enough time to do here, but it blew me out of the water. And the forgiveness of column 1, 2, 3 happened in between that pause between the 3rd and the 4th step. There is spiritual alchemy that happens in the 4th step if we can be directed by the right person. And this person did it with me, right? And Hoagie came on step 8. He made the list, and how I made amends to my dad who died in 99. This was 2003, 2004, as I wrote a letter. And our literature talks about writing a letter, right? The people that we can't see or make amends to. I wrote a letter and I got a sense of ease and comfort. But that Christmas, when I was at my mom's house, first time sober, with my mom and my little brothers, I couldn't look at them in the eyes. I just couldn't. I had guilt, remorse, and morbid reflection. There's more work needed to be done. My second time through treatment, my second time into 4-step, Dad was on there. 8-step, Hoagie was on there, made amends. And this was different. So this amends looked like this. I wrote a letter, but I chose to use magical words with depth and weight. And after I was done, I read it. I think I even read it to the guy a guy named Mark that did my 5th step that time. And then I did a ceremonial burning. And what that did with this letter, it gave it more oomph. It gave it more weight, more depth, and more of a freedom. I got a sense of ease and comfort from doing it that way, making amends to my father who is in the spirit realm. My mom's birthday came up and I went to my mom's birthday and I looked at my mom and I couldn't look at her in the eyes. All I heard and saw was my dad. The guilt, the remorse, the morbid reflection. The four horsemen riddled me with what I did or didn't do or said or didn't say around that man and my family. And I thought, so now we'll just go like this to say I'm 1-2 years sober. I thought that I was going to live my life in sobriety with that, riddled with that. And I did for about 7 years, 7-8 years of sobriety. I'm sitting in this AA meeting now. Me and when boy meets girl in AA campus has baby number 2 named Ollie, and that's a big teacher for me too. The miracles of sobriety. I'm sitting in the back of the room. You know, I have a really good buddy named James L. from Florida. He's a son of a gun, if you can put those two together. He says at the back of the room, they call it a shoe section. I'm like, James, why? He goes, well, Jeff, that's where the sneakers, loafers, slippers, and runners hang out. And I think that's why we put these old timers in the back of the room to make sure those people don't leave. But I'm one of those people at the back of the room suffering in AA with 7 years of sobriety. I'd get up to the podium and throw a 5-3-5-minute pitch but I'm reciting the book, you know, like I'm not telling anything from my experience, right? This guy, he's on here, Charles S. He comes up to the back of the room and he introduced himself. And I go, Charles, I know who you are. And I felt relief. Like, this is it. Thank God. And Charles was really one of the first men that really came up to me and said these words in Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, Jeff, are you willing to come to my house on Monday and bring your big book? I want to take you through the 12 steps of AA. And I said, Charles, yeah. So I did. Every Monday until we're done. And I had a huge spiritual experience with this man, with the big book and the 12 and 12. Why? Because, you know, step 6 and 7 are only 14 lines in the big book. Ha ha ha. Yeah, no, there's a lot more than 14 lines in the big book if we can just have an experience with it. But when we got to step 8, Hoagie's on the list. We got to step 9, and I told him the stories about my amends to my dad. And he said these words. He might have not said them, but this is what I heard him say. He said, Jeff, use the first 8 proposals in your 9th step towards your dad. And I'm like, huh, I didn't know you could do that. He said, Jeff, understand that step 1's promise is that you will drink again without 2 through 12. You're going to drink again. You know, and become willing in step 2. Grab that broad, roomy, and all-inclusiveness. Get off that bridge of reason where you're stuck in the 5.5 inches between your ears. Step ashore. Go to this God with that decision. You've talked about it in 4 and 5, and bring your entirely ready of step 6. Your willingness to even be willing to remove the guilt, the remorse, the morbid reflection, the 4 horsemen, these defective characters into step 7. Ask your God for clear-cut directions and how you could be of maximum service. And I did. And I'm here to tell you this is what happened. God showed up and gave me directions. I picked up that phone and I phoned my mom. I go, Mom, it's Jeff. And she said, hi, dear. She doesn't know that I'm suffering. She just knows that she can watch the news today. She just knows she can pick up the newspaper and not worry that man's body found sort of thing, right? She's just so grateful. And I said, this is what I'd like to do. Is it okay I come to your house? And she said, yes. So I go to her house. She opens the door. We have a hug. And I look over to my right. Something says, Jeff, look to your right. And to my right is this really big, oversized pillow. And this pillow, my dad used to help his back because he was so frail. He used to get out of the mechanical chair he was in. He would lean against this pillow. I grabbed that pillow and we go into the backyard. What's in the backyard is a majestic, large pool that my dad built by hand for his 3 boys in the early 80s and for the neighborhood kids. So I grab my mom. We sit on this pillow. We put our feet into the pool. I hold her hands and I let her know everything. The healing started to happen, like you can see right now. The emotions, you know, like Scott L talks about, and learning to cry in the step 9 amends. Feel it, and I felt it. And my mom's And I got to make amends to my mom at the same time. And I got a sense of ease and comfort. And I looked at her in the eyes and I became free. I've been free since that day. And how I know how I became free is, check this out. The next day I'm at home. Brandy and our two little kids are out. I'm sitting on the couch. I get a knock on the door. I get up. I open the door. This is 2008, 2009. Guess who's at the door? My dad. He walks inside that house. He's 6'3", 250 pounds with bleach blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. He's looking so good. He goes, son, I just want to see how you're doing. He looks around the room and he looks at me straight in my face. He says, I'm so proud of you. There's things I have to do now. I have to go. And he walked himself out and shut that door. And I woke up and I found myself in the middle of the room standing up. Now, whether you want to call that a dream, a vision, like our 9th step talks about, I was willing to go to any lengths for a spiritual experience, and it happened. What that vision or dream did is it put the nail on whatever it was that I'm building in that archway. It happened. I got lit up in AA. I got on fire with Charles with that experience. I started to study our literature. I started sponsoring a lot of people. But by the time I was 14 years sober, this is the type of AA that showed up. This is my original big book from 20 years ago. I would tuck it under my arm and I'd give you a little tap on the head if it wasn't in the first 164. Like the late, great Sandy B talks about. Jeff became animal mechanical AA, and I got sick again. I started to suffer in AA, but I wouldn't let anyone know. You know, I'd still throw up there. I started asking to do a little bit longer than 5-minute pitches now, sort of thing. And I suffered. I just, for some reason, I'm just thinking about those kids and my wife, like what they must have went through when I'm at home and not practicing top of page 19. The much more important demonstrations of our principles needs to practice at home. Occupations and affairs, right? And but anyways, to fast forward 14 years sober, I'm in this structure. Picture this structure, this environment. I'm sitting on a stool. Things aren't going my way. And thank God for page 206 of the big book, Marty Mann's story. It says this. It says that she found herself in a raging and righteous anger. So that was me, 14 years sober. I found myself in a raging and righteous anger. Let me say it again. Jeff found himself in a raging and righteous anger. This raging and righteous anger I've never felt this way as a child, while I'm drinking and in recovery. This was big. And then it happened. Page 24 and 43 got me. I don't have that mental defense against the first drink. Jeff couldn't remember the humiliation, suffering of even a week or a month ago. I was out defense. My brain said this to me, Jeff, you need to do what these people are doing to you. So I'm in this establishment. There's alcohol 20 feet behind me. And my brain said, you need to go drink. I'm like, yeah, I do. It was a Friday. I push that stool back. I start walking towards where this alcohol is. And my brain's still playing tricks. I thought about Brandy. I thought about my 2 kids. And I said this. I said, they're going to suffer. I have credit now today too. The small little company, there's money. I'm really going to do a number here. I'm going to burn my life down to the ground for a couple of days. I kept moving towards the alcohol, so there's no human power. I start moving towards the alcohol, and then my brain said this one last thing to me. It said, just go back to your home group on Monday. I'm like, done deal. I go towards the alcohol. I found myself 20 feet past the alcohol in a bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror. I broke out in cold sweats as soon as I saw my eyes. My body started to shake, and I heard this voice. And you would have been there if you're in that bathroom. And this voice said, you can go do that, or you can come find me. The bottom of page 43 says, except in the few rare occasions. Is this one of them? Possibly. Because I white knuckled it that night. I didn't drink. When I got home, I locked myself in the room. Now, whether God was there, of course God was there. Is there a rare occasion? I don't know if there is. Because God's always there. I didn't drink that night, but I knew what I needed to do, get back to AA. So I go to a roundup, a convention. I think the next Saturday, it was called the Richmond Roundup. And I walked in there with a plaid shirt with this book tucked underneath my arm. There's no way I'm going to let the people know what just happened to me. I put myself at this round table, put my book down on the table with authority, and I sat down and I just waited for this thing to start. And then there's this guy named Tim W. He's suit man number one in my story. So whenever I say suit man number one, this is what he is, who he is. He comes up and we start talking about nothing. He's wearing a suit. We're just starting to talk about life, nothing in depth. And then another guy, Mr. Marty J., my sponsor today. He comes in, he knows Tim W., Suitman number one. So Suitman number one, Suitman number two start talking, and they bring me into this basic general conversation about nothing. And then another guy in the suit, Suitman number three. You might know him. His name is Lyle P. from Atlanta. He wrote Grounded in the Big Book. He knows Marty. He knows Tim. Those three, just those three men in suits, and Jeff, who almost died a little while ago, who almost drank a little while ago, who almost burned his family's life down and the business down a little while ago to the ground. Just us talking about nothing. The chairperson of that roundup goes, we have a treat for you. We have a guy named Tim W. from Portland, Oregon. He's going to tell his story. Tim W., I think he's a descendant from Chuck C. He tells his story. Blew me out of the water. He's suit man number one. And I'm like, okay, something's going on here. He sits down, and the chairperson, Jenny B., she's no longer with us. God bless her soul. She goes, we have a treat for you. We have a local, a guy named Marty J. is going to do a talk on steps 6 and 7. Marty pushes his chair back. This is the egoic self in me. I grab onto his jacket and I say, Marty, how are you going to do this? It's only 14 lines in the big book. Marty's got 41 years sobriety at that time. Oh my Lord, huh? He just brought himself up to stage and introduced himself as Marty J., sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he said, some young, striking young man came up to me and asked me how I'm doing this. And he looked at me and he said, watch. And if that conference didn't end, he wouldn't even be in step 7. I missed so much in AA. He sat down, we had dinner, and then they said, the main speaker tonight is Lyle P. from Atlanta, Georgia. And Lyle, if you've heard his story, you've read his story, if you read the big book, the back of the book, right? I'm just like, okay, here I am, surrounded by, there's no heavy hitters in AA, but let me tell you, there's heavy hitters in AA. By 3 men in suit, because I answered that voice in that bathroom. I became willing to even be willing, and I showed back with you guys, the next day or the following week. Marty started to sponsor me. And let me tell you, the way this guy sponsors, he took me through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous with in depth of emotional sobriety, because I had sobriety. I wasn't drinking. I didn't have the phenomenon of craving, but I had the thinking. I had the spiritual malady. We went through those 12 steps. And this is what Marty said to me. He goes, Jeff, I would rather sponsor a newcomer than you. Marty, don't you know I'm sensitive? Why would you say that to me? And this is what he said, and it's so true. He goes, Jeff, I see you in AA. You know so much stuff. You know way too much. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do, is I'm going to ask you to set aside everything you think you know about the big book, the 12 steps, God, sponsorship, sponseeing, AA, and have a new experience with me. And I did. I got to understand the depth of step 1. I got to understand that, Jeff, if when you honestly want to, you cannot quit entirely, meaning stay, stop. And Jeff, if when drinking, you can't control the amount you take. We went through that at depth. We also went through at depth, page 30. Page 30 of the big book says we had to concede to our innermost selves. It doesn't say self. Selves, that we're alcoholic. And the reason why I say selves, and I say it that way, is because Jeff has so many egoic personalities in his brain. Husband self, businessman self, Mr. AA self, Mr. Friend self. All these selves need to concede that they're all alcoholics. I have a guy that I sponsor named Eric, a beautiful soul, but every time he went on holidays, he would come back broken, not relapsed, but broken, like disturbed. And I'm like, Eric, why is that? I go, you didn't phone me in those 3 weeks you were gone, or you didn't go to any AA meetings? And we realized that he's got a vacation self that hasn't conceded that it's an alcoholic. He doesn't think he needs to do this stuff when he's on holidays. Selves. I got to look at all the egoic selves, like the periodic table of elements, what I have, what I don't have, what I own, what I don't own, what I look like, what I don't look like, all that kind of stuff. Need to concede that they're alcoholic. And if they are, now I need to practice principle, all 12 steps with every single one of those selves. And then this brought great depth when we got into step 4. It's like my own theater of the lie, like Mark H. used to talk about. When I'm disturbed, if I have a financial problem and I'm making the money into this family, it's not just the businessman self, it's the husband self, it's the mortgage payer self. It's all these selves. This what makes me an extreme example. The third step wasn't just a decision. It wasn't just a prayer. That's all it was for me up until Charles. I didn't know about the requirement. I didn't know about the exerting. I didn't know about the driven. We went at depth, right? And when we got into step 6, Entirely Ready, if you want to be book-based of Entirely Ready, it's found on page 75 of the big book, The Hour to Ourself, where we get entirely ready. Did we miss anything? We review the first 5 proposals. Cement, mortar, sand, all that stuff. But today, if you're with me today live, and I'm in a meeting, you'll see, oh, look at Jeff, he's so disturbed because my arms are crossed or my nose is scrunched up like I'm smelling something sour. My Entirely Ready today, besides page 75, you can see it happen. I uncross my arms and my hands do this, palms up. Trust me, I'd rather you people see my knuckles. But I do this. And for me, it's an act of receiving, and it's very body language. It's vulnerable for someone like me, for me. And those 1,000 monkeys in my brain, if I can get one of them gone to make them 999, it's way better than 1,000. And then I watch my breath, whether you guys breathe deeply through your nose, out through your mouth. I get my breath to Jeffrey when he was first born, my first son. No, Jeffrey, when he was born, wasn't breathing. His tummy was going up and down, that little tummy. Air was going in and out, but he, egoically, wasn't breathing. I might get my breath to that place. Stillness. Vulnerable. Now I'm going to go to God in 7. Now I'm going to go to God in 7. It's really hard for someone like me, someone of my variety, someone who's so selfish and self-centered, to get to Dr. Paul O's page 417 acceptance. Try it based on self. I'm not like Anna or Elsa off Frozen and let it go. I can't do that. That's what this Design for Living has helped me. The tools of 6 and 7 allow me to get to acceptance on page 417. In 10 and 11, they're not bonus rounds. For the first almost year and a half with Mr. Marty J, I would send him my constructive review at night. Then on Awakening, where we get to be asked to be divorced from selfish, self-pity, and self-seeking motives, so we can have a new experience and remain teachable, so we can bring this God in that's saving me from alcoholism, that is allowing my relationship to God. God's not keeping me sober. It's my relationship with this power that's keeping me sober. If God was keeping me sober, it'd be a 2-step program. It's my relationship. It's how Jeff's showing up. It's about my sane and sound ideals, the new ones and not old ones. To get rid of those unconscious files when they go up into my thinking, to get rid of those, let them fall from me and bring the new ones and the old good ones up, like little Jeffrey when he was born. That one will never go away. But the 6-year-old, the 7-year-old, the 13-year-old, the dumpster bike, those get to go. Sometimes quickly, experience, sometimes slowly, awakening. To be able to pause when agitated or doubtful. That's what I'm trying to grow right now. It's like the 3rd to the 4th column in the 4th step. It's like step 6 into step 7. You know, it's like step 8 into step 9. I never knew any of this existed at this depth until I met Marty. You got to watch out who you sponsor, though. Because when I got through the 12 steps of A, he phoned me up and said, "What are you doing this Friday?" I'm like, "Nothing, sir. What should I be doing?" He goes, "Well, you're going to Kamloops to go. You're the Friday night speaker at this roundup." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" So watch out who sponsors you, because you don't know what's going to happen. But you know, that I've had a great life since then. You know, we all got struck with COVID, right? It's sensitive. The world got shut down. We didn't know what to do. AA stayed alive. But personally, I didn't know what to do. My business got affected. There's some financial stuff there. Teenager, enough said, right? When you got a teenager, we get it. Yeah, a teenager. Cancer came to my house. I had a friend named, I won't mention his name, from Toronto. He flew out here to bury his brother who died of alcoholism. And he's looking at me, and I'm sitting in my office when I'm going through all this stuff. I'm going when all this sensitive stuff is happening. And he looked at me, he goes, "Jeff, how you doing this? How you staying so sane, and how you staying sober?" And I just looked at him and I said, "You know what? I'm not doing it. God is. Because if I was doing it, I'd probably be drunk." I'm super happy to say that that cancer has left my house today. This doesn't exist here. I'm going to end with this. I offer for your consideration. My mom, Brandy, hates it when I say that, but I got this from our good friend Charlie P. I miss that guy so much. I offer for your consideration, for all of your considerations. How far back do you have to go to find glory? This comes from a man named Jim C. He's not one of us, but he's a real funny guy. Hopefully you can figure that out. But Jim C said this to me one day. How far back do you have to go to find glory or grace? We read how it works in our meetings. If you don't find it when it says, "May you find him or it now," thank God we have step 11. We have on awakening, because we get to be divorced from all that stuff and bring God in to bring our thought life in the higher plane. And if we didn't do that this morning, I consider phoning your sponsor, because there might need a 4-step to be happening. You know, it's we all suffer from delayed clarity. I do all the time. And things start to become clearer. 20 years of sobriety, and things, I still feel so new. And thank God I feel so new. Trust me, I thought I was an old timer at 14 years sober. Honestly, I feel like since March 2017 till now, so I'm about 6 or 7 years sober emotionally. Kevin, thanks for asking me to share here, buddy. And I hope something happened. Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, hold on.